Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another video. So this one we're talking about some news of Warcraft, something a little bit more to heart on this one, because I'm a big fan of the person we're talking about here, which is Chris Metzen. So he came back to Blizzard a little while ago, I think before the launch of Dragonflight or around about then, as an advisor role. So he wasn't really employed by Blizzard, he was more of a consultant. That's my belief of that job title, despite where you are in the world, because I think this Twitter post, which I just grabbed, sort of supports that notion significantly more, because they have taken him on back as a full-time role. So full-time role would be you're employed as an executive creative director of the Warcraft universe. So essentially a similar role he had before, which was just creative director, which I would assume he was having an input to the whole IP of their that they had under Blizzard. This one is more specifically Warcraft. I've got to be honest with you, Blizzard is in trouble with pretty much all of their IP at this stage, but Warcraft I think has been stemmed, but the others seem to be questionable. Diablo 4 did okay, I believe. I've not played it. StarCraft, non-existent. Overwatch, a train wreck. I think talking about Overwatch will have its own video. I don't play it, but I think there's important news, but I might wait after BlizzCon, which coming soon on this video is not far away. So let's talk about Chris Metzen and how this impacts Blizzard, Warcraft more specifically going forward, and is it the hope we've been after? So with Chris Metzen's return as being full-time employed back into Blizzard, where does this lead us? What is this going to sort of achieve? I'm gonna say, in my honest opinion, we haven't really seen much of his impact in Dragonflight. I think Dragonflight was the Dragonflight we received is basically the result of Shadowlands, so I don't believe we needed Chris Metzen for that. But I just want to take a moment here. Chris Metzen left sometime, I believe, during Warlords of Draenor. I don't believe I saw him in Legion. Again, Legion was an answer to Warlords of Draenor, which is why it was which is why it was good. But we need to sort of understand Chris here. He was around when Warlords of Draenor actually dropped, and we can see how badly that did. It didn't go so well for anyone at Blizzard, I'm sorry to say, or any of the players. We really didn't like that game. Or rather, we didn't like that expansion. So he has been around where there's been misses, but he's been around where most of the success for Warcraft has been, including their RTS titles. Now, if we look at that post, it says Warcraft Universe, not just World of Warcraft. Does that mean we're going to see another RTS game within the Warcraft universe? I hope, because they're very good games. It's just weird that they haven't made another one in that vein. It's just strange. What I do see Chris's involvement within Warcraft going forward is saying no to a lot of ideas people might put across, because a lot of sort of the lore ideas, some of the direction the game goes in, has been questionable, and I do believe they do need someone to take a stance on the matter to say no, this is not a good idea. My idea is better, and I hate to say it, Chris for the most part has delivered on that in the past. So I think he will try to stop Blizzard making mistakes, is what my opinion of his role will be. But in terms of the directions going forward, what will his creative vision be? So I'm hoping he steers Warcraft, the modern Warcraft, and I say this very explicitly until I get to the next point, that he'll steer it into a positive direction, not just in terms of the lore and the story and what makes sense going forward, but also the game mechanics that is associated with all of that. The Shadowlands, especially the Battle for Azeroth, those mechanical directions, just playing the game as it is that tied to the bring about of those expansions just were awful. Not to mention, we need better exiting of the expansions and launching ourselves into the expansions. Going into Battle of Azeroth wasn't so bad from Legion, but going into Battle of Azeroth was a bit rubbish, in my opinion. But I think exiting Battle for Azeroth was significantly worse when we're going into Shadowlands. There was no fine line, there was no smooth line. It was just, Sylvanas did this, we're going into this area of the realm of death, apparently, in the cosmology chart. And it's just like, what? What was that? As the transition from Shadowlands to Dragonflight was also as big, but I believe that was just to say goodbye Shadowlands. So we should hopefully see Chris's input going between these expansions more smooth, more enjoyable, makes more sense, and when they go into the expansion, the mechanics of that expansion isn't so bad, it isn't so prominent for us just to be adventuring into these worlds and being immersed to play the game. I mean, raiding is still good in the game, that hasn't really dropped in my opinion. But that's not really Chris's sort of thing, but everything else in the expansion can really make getting up to that point whether you want to raid or not. So hopefully we see Chris's input going forward to be positive. We get to see something more creative, more evergreen stuff to do as well, and just have a fun game to play as you log in. But I would say Chris's return is more instrumental than we think. I believe modern WoW cannot be reversed back into the classic eras. And by classic eras, I mean mechanically from classic, TBC, and some aspects Wrath, and maybe some Cataclysm in there. In my opinion, modern WoW cannot return to that. I don't believe they can cut the game, prune the game, or I'll say prune the game, cut the game, redesign it, go back to that in a sudden flash. I don't believe they can do that anymore. I think the trajectory the game is in, the sort of shallow, the significantly more shallow sort of gameplay, mechanics, grind, all of that goes together. And the instant gratification is still there. The sort of slot machine is kind of still there. I don't believe they can reverse it anymore. I think the game's too far gone. And I believe, because if they did that, they won't get the return of the older players because they're enjoying classic. But even then, there's the players that enjoyed it still have not returned. Then you have your newer breed of players that will go. Then it's kind of like, well, the game's too far gone, in my opinion. So what can they do? And well, there was this leak, and I don't know if we'll see this in BlizzCon. It's this. So there was a rumor, possibly a leak, of something quite interesting, and I believe Chris Metzen is the spearhead behind this, which is taking classic WoW and taking on to a new trajectory into its own sort of, how can we, this will still be retail WoW, this will still be an expansion in its own right, but this is a classic plus expansion, which we're going into. According to this, we don't go into Draenor or Burning Crusade. We sort of continue on with Azeroth, and this will mean a lot of things that were set in motion going into the Dark Portal would not have happened. Which, in terms of lore, this will be very interesting. No one's really done this to say, you know what? Let's go back into the classic game. let's just start from there again, and let's restart the whole thing again. That's not bad. Not only would you appeal to your old veteran players that made the game what it were, you'd probably be able to bring in a new breed of players for this as well, but it also means they can still have Modern Warcraft with its mechanics and where it's stuck with. But then you've got this. You've got the old mechanics still there in the game, and instead of cutting it down, instead of pruning it, instead of downgrading it, you know what they can do? They can expand on it. They can make a new Burning Crusade. They can make a new Wrath without the detrimental changes that got to a point where they could not reintroduce, for example, long-term content, longer grind content, tougher, just everything just being a little bit tougher going forward, tougher dungeons. The game is made baseline as it were. There wasn't any, they're not taking away the experience. They're going to try to expand on it. They're going to have a story that makes sense again. How we go throughout the world, something more true to the Warcraft universe instead of these retconning and just making up stuff as we go along and trying to determine mechanics to sort of bring about that. This is interesting, and I don't believe development for this will be too difficult because, like it says here, reuse of assets. Blizzard does that anyway with their expansions, and it's not a bad thing. It's just where you put it. So that's fine. But I do think this will be really, really interesting to have it's not a Warcraft 2, it's a Warcraft, it's not even re-envisioned. It's a new direction. It's not even a new direction. I don't even know what to call this because I've not really seen this happen before. I mean, before people are going about Final Fantasy XIV and A Realm Reborn, that's different. That was literally gutting the game and remaking it. This is, what if we restart the game from a new point to a new direction, a new trajectory? Let's be more conscious of the additions and changes we make so that we don't so we can keep the game that people really liked in the past. People that imagine have this nostalgia of what Warcraft was, but not just play on nostalgia. You can say okay, they bring out a new expansion based on the older style of the older style of the game. Continue going forward with that. That's interesting. I think if they still keep the classic servers, but then add this addition okay, if you want the expansion to this, different servers, that's fine. And I think that'd be good. I still think the old class designs were significantly better than they are now. I think Dragonflight's improved it from the previous expansions, but that was via complaint. But this will allow them to say, our vision is to keep Warcraft more technical, more down to earth, more immersive adventuring, where we're not trying to go to different worlds, different planets. I think TBC might be the exception to that because it fits into the original Warcraft anyway. But I think instead of going into back in time in Worlds of Draenor, Pandaria was very good, but thematically it was jarring. Then everything from there seemed odd. And I'm going to be completely honest, as good as Legion was mechanically, I do think certain bad guys like Sigaris was better being remained as a mysterious entity that we would never seen. I think when you have bad guys like Sigaris and the lore that we have for them, just having them as an antagonist, but we deal with their influence more than we do with the actual entity of Sargeras, is much better. Nethrahim, however you want to say that, the fact that they were tied strictly to Shadowlands and the Jailer was awful. I think if there was something more tied to Sargeras directly and his influence of their demonization is significantly better, my opinion. I'm hoping this will reboot the older style of Warcraft, the idea of when it comes to mechanically more long-term goals, leveling takes longer because I actually like slower leveling these days. So with Chris, do we see this as this re-envisioning of Warcraft? I think so. I think for Chris to come back, he would have had to stay, these are my stipulations. For me to return back to Blizzard, to be this particular role and employment, I need my power and decision making back. This is what I want, and I want less arguing behind it. I can imagine him spearheading this project means he gets to re-envision his story. In fact, creative people tend to have more than one idea for their stories, so this could be another one of those, and fingers crossed, if this is true, we get this. It gets to continue like that and not blundle over the mistakes the game has made. Let me know what you guys think. Comment below, give it a like or a dislike, whatever, it's engagement. And I want to do more of these videos, so subscribe to that, including for other games and other topic areas. See you guys.